There is a feeling that millions of people carry around every single day, and most of them have never heard a name for it. It is not depression. It is not full panic. It is not the kind of anxiety that stops you from leaving the house. It is quieter than that. It sits somewhere underneath everything, like background noise you cannot turn off. A low, steady hum of tension that follows you through your morning, through your work, through your evenings. You wake up and for a few seconds everything is fine. Then it returns. That sense that something is not quite right, that something is coming, that the world underneath you is somehow less solid than it used to be. And here is what makes it stranger. You cannot point to a single cause. Your job might be fine. Your health might be fine. The people you love might be safe. And yet the feeling is still there. Psychologists have a term for this. They call it free-floating anxiety. It is anxiety that has detached itself from any specific threat. It is not fear of one thing. It is a general, persistent readiness for something bad to happen. And according to research published in the journal Psychological Science, this form of anxiety has become significantly more common over the last 2 decades. It is not just that people are more anxious. It is that they are anxious about everything and nothing at the same time. So the question worth asking is this: why? Why does modern life produce this feeling so reliably? And why, even when your own circumstances are stable, does the world still feel like it is standing on uncertain ground? The answer begins not with the world itself, but with the brain that is trying to make sense of it. The human brain has a threat detection system that neuroscientists refer to as the amygdala. It is one of the oldest structures in the brain, evolutionarily speaking, and its job is simple. It scans your environment constantly and automatically, looking for anything that might cause you harm. When the amygdala detects a potential threat, it triggers what researchers call the stress response. Your heart rate climbs, your attention narrows, your body shifts into a state of readiness. This is the mechanism that kept your ancestors alive when danger was real, immediate, and physical. The problem is this: the amygdala does not distinguish between a threat that is physically present and a threat that is merely possible. It responds to information the same way it responds to experience. It cannot tell the difference between reading about a crisis halfway around the world and standing in the middle of one. Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, a neuroscientist at Northeastern University and author of How Emotions Are Made, explains that the brain is fundamentally a prediction machine. It is constantly building models of what the world is likely to do next, and when those models are being fed an endless stream of unstable, unpredictable, threatening information, the models it builds reflect exactly that. The brain begins to predict danger as the default, not because danger is certain, but because uncertainty itself is treated by the nervous system as a form of threat. That last point matters more than most people realize. Research by cognitive neuroscientist Archie de Burker and his team at University College London found something remarkable when studying how human beings respond to uncertainty. Participants in their study were significantly more stressed when they did not know whether they were going to receive a mild electric shock than when they knew for certain they would receive one. Read that again. People were more distressed by not knowing than by knowing something bad was definitely coming. The brain, it turns out, would rather face a confirmed threat than live in a state of open uncertainty. Even bad certainty gives the brain something to work with, something to plan around. Uncertainty offers nothing to grab onto, and modern life is saturated with uncertainty. The economy shifts in ways that are genuinely difficult to predict. Political landscapes change dramatically within election cycles. Technology evolves faster than society can adapt to it. Institutions that once felt permanent now feel contested, and over all of it hangs a collection of large, slow-moving global problems that have no clear resolution date. None of this is catastrophizing. These are observable features of the current moment. And the brain responds to all of it the same way it responded to the rustling of leaves in tall grass thousands of years ago. It stays alert. It stays ready. And when it stays in that state for long enough without resolution, the alertness itself starts to feel like evidence that something must be wrong. There is a second mechanism at work here that compounds the first one. In 1998, psychologists Roy Baumeister and Ellen Bratslavsky published research documenting what they called negativity bias. The finding was straightforward but striking. Human beings, across cultures and age groups, pay significantly more attention to negative information than to positive information. Negative events are processed more deeply. They are remembered more clearly. They are given more weight in decision-making. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes perfect sense. An ancestor who dismissed a potential threat and turned out to be wrong paid a much higher price than one who treated a harmless situation as dangerous and wasted a little energy being cautious. The asymmetry in consequences shaped the asymmetry in attention. But today, that cognitive bias operates in an environment it was never designed for. You open a news application, and the algorithm surfaces the most alarming, most emotionally activating content first. Not because the algorithm wants you to suffer, because engagement data shows, consistently, that alarming content holds attention longer. Your negativity bias and the platform's engagement optimization are pointed in exactly the same direction. The result is a daily information experience that systematically overrepresents threat, conflict, and instability relative to how they actually exist in the world. Dr. Steven Pinker of Harvard University, in his book Enlightenment Now, spent considerable effort documenting the ways in which global health, poverty reduction, violence rates, and life expectancy have measurably improved across decades. His point was not that the world has no problems. It was that the subjective sense of whether the world is getting worse does not reliably track with objective measures. The feeling and the data diverge, and the feeling wins, because the feeling is what the brain is most immediately responsive to. Now add one more layer to this: the speed of change. Dr. Alvin Toffler introduced the concept of future shock in his 1970 book of the same name. He described it as the psychological disorientation that results from living through too much change in too short a period of time. His argument was that human beings have a limited capacity to absorb and adapt to change. When that rate of change exceeds our adaptive capacity, the result is a form of chronic stress. Toffler was writing more than 50 years ago. The rate of change he was concerned about then is modest compared to what people are navigating now. Consider what has shifted within a single decade. The nature of work, the tools people use to communicate, the platforms through which public discourse happens, the economic sectors that are stable versus vulnerable, the global geopolitical order. All of it has moved faster than at almost any previous point in recorded history, and the brain requires stability to feel safe, not perfection, not the absence of challenge. Just enough predictability to build a coherent model of what tomorrow will look like. When that predictability disappears, the brain reads the situation as dangerous, because from a survival standpoint, unpredictability and vulnerability are closely related. If you cannot model the future, you cannot prepare for it. And if you cannot prepare for it, you are exposed. The nervous system registers this exposure. It does not use those words, but it produces the feeling that something might be coming. There is also something important happening at the social level. Human beings are deeply social animals. Our psychological well-being is tied, in measurable and documented ways, to our sense of belonging, shared meaning, and connection to a stable community. Research by Dr. Robert Putnam at Harvard, documented in his landmark work Bowling Alone, tracked the decline of social capital in the United States across several decades. Social capital refers to the networks, shared norms, and trust that hold communities together. And his data showed a consistent, significant decline across a range of measures: participation in civic organizations, informal social visits, indicators of interpersonal trust. This pattern has been observed in varying degrees across many societies undergoing rapid modernization. When social trust weakens, the psychological cost is real. People feel less certain about the reliability of others, less certain about shared values, less certain about whether the social fabric will hold under pressure. That uncertainty feeds directly back into the stress response systems already on high alert from everything else. The result is a form of collective unease that each individual experiences as a private, internal sensation. Millions of people walking around with the same feeling, often believing they are experiencing it alone. So what does all of this mean? First, it means the feeling itself is real. It is not weakness. It is not irrationality. It is a predictable output of a very sophisticated survival system operating inside an environment that the system was never calibrated for. The human nervous system was optimized for a world of immediate, local, concrete threats. It is now running inside a world of global, mediated, abstract, and perpetually unresolved uncertainty. The mismatch between system and environment produces a persistent background signal of low-grade threat detection. Second, it means understanding the mechanism changes the experience of it. When you feel that quiet background tension, your brain has a default interpretation. Something must be wrong. I should find the threat and respond to it. But neuroscience gives us a different interpretation. My amygdala is active. My negativity bias is engaged. My stress response is running because the conditions around me are uncertain and my information environment is overloaded. That interpretation does not make the feeling disappear, but it interrupts the loop, because the most costly version of this experience is not the background anxiety itself. It is the anxiety about the anxiety. The feeling that something must be wrong with you for feeling this way. The search for a source that will explain and justify what you are experiencing. Understanding the mechanism at least removes that second layer. Third, it is worth remembering what the research actually shows about periods of uncertainty in human history. People have lived through profound instability before. The individuals who navigated those periods best were not the ones who successfully predicted every outcome. They were the ones who remained oriented, who maintained connection, who could tolerate ambiguity without being paralyzed by it. Psychologist Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, through decades of research on resilience and learned helplessness, found that the crucial variable is not the presence of difficulty. It is the individual's sense of having some capacity to respond to it, not control over everything, just response capacity. That distinction, small as it sounds, is enormous in terms of its effect on how the nervous system responds to uncertainty. The feeling of dread that so many people carry is not a signal that the world is ending. It is a signal that a brain built for a different kind of world is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Stay alert, stay ready, look for patterns. And the strange, almost ironic truth is this. The brain that produces this feeling is also the brain capable of stepping back, examining its own outputs, and recognizing them for what they are. Not prophecy, not evidence, just the very human, very ancient, very understandable response of a nervous system trying its best to keep you safe in a world that has simply changed faster than instinct can follow. That is the world modern human beings are living in, not standing at the edge of collapse, but carrying the weight of uncertainty in a body that was never built for quite this much of it.